Welcome to Black Wellness. Thank you for watching us today and listening to us today live on Radio Regent. You can catch our live broadcast at www.radioregent.com. Also catch us on Facebook. Our live video feed comes on the week following our show, and that is located at Support Black Wellness on Facebook. So at Support Black Wellness on Facebook. And if you want to reach us directly, please contact us by email at blackwellnessworldwide@gmail.com. That's blackwellnessworldwide@gmail.com. My name is Giselle Wilson, and I will be your host. This show is co-produced with my co-producer, Lori Beezer. Check out our vendors. We represent mind, body, and community when it comes to the wellness of the community and the wellness of people of African descent. We're going to be at the Durham Caribbean Festival on June 29. Actually, it's a week's worth of activities in Durham region. And on the 29th, we're having a huge festival. So we want to shout out all the organizers that worked so hard to organize that event. It is 8 years running, and it's going to be at the Pickering High School in Ajax on June the 29th. So we're hoping to see all of you there. Our vendors are going to be very well represented through Black Wellness. We have practitioners, healers, doctors, athletes, and we have all different types of cultural products and services that we want to bring to you on a holistic, organic level that promote health and wellness. So this month is the month of June. Last month, we spoke about women and their mental health. This month, we're focusing on our men, especially our Black men and their mental health. So tonight, I have a wonderful gentleman here with me with an amazing story that I look forward to hearing. And we're going to be talking about a highly sought after industry that's going through some transition and change. And we definitely want to talk about it on the level of participation and creating more opportunities for diversity in the industry. And we're talking about the aviation industry in Canada. And I have with me Eugene Rodgers, who is in the industry right now, who is learning and progressing to become a future pilot in Canada. So welcome, Eugene, to the show.
Thank you, Giselle. It's really good to be here.
Yeah, it's good to have you. Okay. So I want to have a bit of a conversation with you about your journey.
Okay.
And I want to know, when did you know you wanted to be a pilot?
You know, I often tell people that ask me that it's one of those corny stories where when you were a child, something happens, right?
Yeah.
So I was originally born in the beautiful island of St. Vincent.
Right.
And at the age of 5, my family was relocating from St. Vincent to Antigua. So that was the first time I was ever going to have a flight or whatever the case is.
Yeah.
And on the plane, I was amazed that a big piece of machine like this could be kept up in the air, and we were all in it, which kept it even heavier. So I kept asking my parents, can I go see the pilots? Can I go see the pilots?
Wow.
But my mom thought that, if I went to harass them, something would happen to the plane and we would all go down. So she said no, So I looked around the plane and I noticed something. All right. The bathroom was right next to the cockpit. So what I decided, I was like, listen, I need to use the bathroom. So they sent me to the bathroom and they told me to come right back. And I said, okay. So I went into the bathroom and I closed the door for like 50 Mississippis. Okay? And then when I thought that they were not looking, I opened the door, I looked back, they were talking to each other, and I snuck into the cockpit. Those days it was just a little door with a curtain that used to keep the passengers away from the pilots.
So you saw the magic.
I went into the cockpit and it was the most beautiful view you have ever seen, okay?
Wow.
And I was like, wow. And the pilots looked back for a second and they said, well, where's your parents? And I said, I snuck in. So the captain, he showed me around, he showed me a few buttons, and he asked me what I wanted to be, and I said, this is what I want to be. And then he called on the PA system my parents, so he kind of sold me out.
So it was a bittersweet, embarrassing, but great moment for you.
Yeah, and from that moment I said to them, listen, I'm going to be a pilot. And nice. A lot of kids often say, this is what I'm going to be when they're young, and then it changes. But for me, it's never changed. All throughout school, I was just fascinated with it.
Right.
And then after secondary school, my family couldn't really afford it because to become a pilot is not low-key but high-key expensive.
That's right. That's right.
So instead of going to aviation school, I went to university. I studied business administration and I focused on marketing.
Okay.
And then when I finished university, I still wanted to fly, man. Every time I saw a plane in the sky, I would spend minutes looking at it. I would stop whatever I'm doing just to look at the planes in the sky.
Wow.
So what I decided is I applied to a school here in Canada, and they accepted me. And this was now 13 years ago.
Right.
And when they sent me the package, it was about $75,000 that they
$75,000.
said. And that's Canadian, right? So
14 years ago.
Right.
So let's just create this picture. You were in Antigua, St. Vincent, and you've always had this dream.
Right.
And I'm assuming you're very scholastic. You did what you had to do. And then you were accepted in a different country. And it's $75,000. Is that per year?
That's for the entire program.
Entire program.
Well, but it was based on like minimum, or like the minimum quote. Because, it can go over depending on how long you take to learn a particular
And that's
technique.
an international student level.
Right.
Wow.
So it was 75,000 Canadian. However, to get 75,000 Canadian where I'm from, you have to multiply that by 2.7, okay? So it was a lot of money, and because I had debt from studying in the university and stuff like that, I said to the school, I'm going to save it. The president at the school said to me, there's no possible way you can save it. You're going to have to go to a bank. I said to him, I promise you, sir, I'm going to save it. He didn't take me very seriously.
What?
All right, so I took 10 years and I started saving the funds. I opened up a marketing company back home. I used to market other companies.
Okay.
And then everybody with a camera decided that they were doing marketing too. So
including us.
Right? After the marketing, after that became a little bit saturated.
Yeah.
I didn't know what to do. And I got an opportunity from a shipping company to represent them back home in Antigua. And that helped me tremendously in terms of saving the funds to come here.
Okay.
When I realized I had the funds, I applied for my visa and everything, and I came to Canada. I called the school, of course.
Right.
And I said, listen, man, you need to remember me from 10 years ago. I'm sending you an email.
So wait a minute. 10 years.
Yeah.
You were saving for 10 years.
For 10 years.
For 75,000 times 3.
Okay, so if I worked for $50 for a week,
Right.
okay, I was saving $25. And then I was using the other $25 to live, right? So every time I got money, I used to save half of it. And at one point, like, I had a child along the way. I had a daughter.
Right.
And money had to start, being separated for that. But even when that happened, like, I still continued saving as much as I can. And at one point, I forgot about checking the balance. It just became habitual. So I was putting the money. And it wasn't until one day I was feeling extremely depressed. And the person I was dating with at the time, they said, well, why don't you go follow your dream and become a pilot? And I'm like, I don't have the money. Let me check.
Yeah.
Right? When I did check, I realized, okay, I probably have enough to come to school, but I didn't even really realize that you have to pay accommodations too, right?
Right. And that doesn't include food and
exactly,
all kind of stuff.
But, I'm religious, so I think that God made a way for me.
Of course.
Right? And it sorted itself out, and I got here to Canada. And when I went to the school the first day, I remember walking into the president's office. And before I said hello to him, I started crying, man. And he thought I was crazy. He said, what's going on? I said, well, my name is Eugene. And he said, Eugene. I said, yes, I'm the guy that you said I would never be able to save the money to come here.
Look at that. We're talking about men and their mental health, especially young men and their mental health. And to me, from what you're telling me so far, that is sheer determination and focus in terms of your life's goal, despite the fact that you have to earn a living and you may have to divert it into marketing and business and things like that. You were focused on your goal. 100%. What is the key message in terms of that you want to tell other people?
You know what?
And following their dreams.
When I think of my story so far, I like to use the word persevere, because as much as I'm telling this story with a shortened version of it,
right?
I need you to understand that to do what I did there and then, it wasn't a walk in the park.
Yeah.
It was really hard. So I think as young people, or even as people in general, we need to understand that not everything will be given to us. However, we have to also understand that what's worth having is worth fighting for.
That is so true.
And because of that, perseverance is my biggest word in this entire story.
And what do you think? How did your faith play into reaching your goals and keeping you focused on what your purpose is?
I would say it played the most important role for me, because there were times where even my family members said to me, it's never going to happen, bro. You need to wake up and realize it's not going to happen. You're not.
They were discouraging you?
And this was even family members. I'm not saying it was all of my family members, but realistically, anybody who would hear that you're trying to save this kind of money to go study to be something else, they came up with a lot of reasons why I shouldn't do it. As a matter of fact, at one point, they were like, "You're wait, bro," because I'm I'm cutely chubby, you know.
I am cutely chubby. I love it.
But even to do my medical to come here, man, for like 2 months, I was pounding the gym. I was walking. I was running. I was fit. I know I kind of, changed a little bit, but yeah, but it meant that I had to, for me to get what I wanted, I knew that I had to make certain changes, and I was willing to do the changes. I was willing to go through the process, and I was willing to trust the process as well.
You're a rarity, to be very honest. I think if I were to characterize the generation, not to say there's hopelessness at all, but I find that this generation, to work and be determined at that level, just alone shows that you're going to make it. Because sometimes we look at our timeline, we look at the now. We're really into instant gratification as opposed to the long-term goal, as opposed to saving in bites. It's $25 or whatever the amount was that you put away slowly over time. There's a principle that they talk about in terms of which one would you want more, $1 million or a penny a day. And I think the calculation works out to be, if you have a penny a day, it works out to be more because we're talking about
a lifelong.
We're talking a lifelong initiative. We're talking about multiplication. We're talking about those type of things, right? But a lot of people, if you're looking on the surface, would only take the $1 million.
Yeah.
So I find it quite interesting that even as a young person, you started saving on your own. And that's something I wanted to put out there and just say to anyone who has a goal that they need to save something each day. Our financial management and our fiscal responsibility has a large part to play in determining our destiny. What do you think about that?
I absolutely agree.
Yeah.
I do.
So that's something. Now give us a bit of context of the industry in terms of the expense. So you alluded and you were talking about how expensive this industry is.
Right.
What are the components? What do you need? So there's school, and that costs what it costs.
Right.
What else?
Outside of school there's just your health that you have to take care of because as a pilot you have to be tested every year just to make sure that you're physically fit enough to be transporting people. And that's
what about flight hours and those type of things?
To become a commercial pilot in Canada, you have to have around 200 hours. Flight time. Then you can go through the testing of flight test and written exams through Transport Canada. And once you're successful with those, you're given a pilot's license. Then you also have to do your multi-engine, and you have to do your IFR rating, which is your instrument flying ratings. Some people go on to do their float ratings because they want to fly and land on water and stuff like that.
Oh, wow.
And for different aircrafts that you want to fly, if I leave from training to go to fly WestJet Encore, of course, I'd have to do the type rating for that as well. And even when you get employed, you have to do constant training with the company. You have to do simulated time.
And this is all at a cost, right?
Well, when you're employed, it's usually covered by the airline, but before that point,
you have
it's all at a cost. It's all
at a
cost.
Pocket. Oh my goodness, that is incredible. And just for those who are tuning in, you're tuning into Black Wellness. My name is Giselle Wilson, your host. We're talking to Eugene Rodgers, who is our future pilot in the industry. And I just wanted to give you some stats that I was looking at in terms of, we touched a little bit in our offline conversation about diversity and the opportunities for minorities or people of color and even women to get into the industry. And I was looking at some stats that I was looking at. Number one, Canada is the third largest aerospace sector in the world. Didn't even know that. And they garner like $29.8 billion annually, just the industry alone. So it's a very favorable industry. However, we produce about 1,200, and this is a 2018 stat. We produce about 1,200 new pilots each year, but only 500 of them enter into the industry. And then on top of that, only like 10 to 12% are women pilots. So you can kind of tell the opportunities and the barriers that finances create for certain populations
100%.
To get into the industry. If I look into the American market, because I couldn't even find stats on blacks. There's none in Canada yet now, but in the States, this is crazy. This is a 2012 stat, and this is a government report, a U.S. report. 93% in 2012. 93% of pilots were white. And 2.7% were black. 2 years later, in 2014, 97% were white and 2% were black. I mean, what do you think about that?
That is one of the things that a lot of people had said to me in the beginning when I said that I was trying to become a pilot. They said, like, people who are like you are very rare, and if they are pilots and they're your color, then they're from affluent families and they have it like that, or they were lucky enough, or whatever the case is. And then I was like, well, why can't I change the status quo? Why can't I help? Because if I never get in, then how will the figures ever change?
That's true.
If you never get in, how are you going to change the system, So I never let it. And to be honest, back in the Caribbean, we have this mentality, okay? We're the majority. So we never really think of the fact that, you never
think of race or culture.
Yeah, we never. Way. Yeah, if we do see people that are white or whatever, we speak to them in a well way, because most of our Caribbean countries, we rely on tourism,
right?
And that results in impacting or speaking with people of different races and colors and stuff like that. Right. So in the Caribbean, I would say that we're not necessarily affected the way that people in North America or even Central or South America are affected. And this is one of the things that I had to face when I just came here, because I had a bit of a culture shock when I came to Canada. I've never been, before coming here on the 29th of January 2017, I have never been to a first world country.
Wow.
Okay? So I came here in the dead of winter, never experienced it. I came here in a short
in
pants
winter.
And a jersey,
And how did you make it out of the airport?
It was the funniest, most embarrassing story. I doubt we should tell it on radio.
I think we should tell it.
But it was super embarrassing, I would tell you. But I mean, when I came here, I realized that the playing field for people based on their race or their background,
right,
is not as level as I thought the world had it.
Right.
And that kind of threw me down for a while. And at some point I started feeling hopeless, so to speak, even in my journey here, especially when things went bad for me in terms of my training and my funding. I was really hopeless, because I figured in a country like this, there's no way that I would ever get the kind of assistance that I would need to get to where I would be.
Right.
And I'm pretty sure we'll cover that just now.
Definitely.
Like I said before, it's not a story about a bed of roses, not at all.
Wow.
So I mean, in this time, I hope we get to discuss that.
Definitely,
part of it as well.
I definitely want to discuss that. I want to discuss the challenges. What are the different challenges that you faced? Okay, being in Antigua and wanting to be a pilot and saving towards that and working toward, and then coming here. What were the financial challenges different once you were here?
100% different. In the Caribbean, and I'm probably boasting a little bit, but we're a little bit more relaxed than it is here in Canada. The sort of taxes that we pay here is not something that you're accustomed to, and even the billing cycles is not something you're accustomed to, because, to be honest, if I'm paying rent and at the end of the month I don't have it, I'm gonna call my landlord back home and say, listen, don't check me till next week, And they're like, okay, no problem. But up here in Canada, pay rent on time, bro. 1 day later, you're getting a letter,
Wow, yeah.
So even things like that, where your mentality is concerned, it had to change. And I would say, though, when I came to Canada, I learned to appreciate money more. Back home, I would obviously waste $1 sometime. But coming here, I realized most Canadians, down to the last cent, they budget it, right? And it wasn't until I started following up that pattern, so to speak, that I realized, okay, money can actually be stretched a little bit more if I was a little bit more responsible, rather than going out this week, I'll do this or do that. And it helped me with that. So I would say that in a lot of ways, Canada has helped my mentality to develop and to really enforce stricter restrictions on myself.
Wow. And you know what? You're not the first to say that. I'm married. My husband is from the Caribbean. And like you said, it's a different lifestyle or mindset when it comes to money and resources and things like that. I guess there's a vision. I want you to describe a little bit more of your perception of Canada or Europe. What is the perception in the Caribbean when you haven't been to?
I'll tell you the perception.
Yes.
I'll tell you the
perception. Because I hear this all the time.
Listen,
I'm born here, so it's like, to me, this is the norm, right?
All right. Okay. How to put this in a nice radio way?
Nice radio way.
In the Caribbean,
with the truth here. No,
in the Caribbean, we tend to feel like, if you're in the US, if you're in Canada, if you're in the UK, you're living life. Okay, you can get your big house, your big car, anything you need on Amazon, you order it. It's 2 minutes away. And we feel like food is like $3 and $4, and so now that you're away, now that I'm away, I have family members or even friends back home that don't get the concept that living in Canada is expensive plus tax. So they would call you, listen, man, can you send me 500? Can you send me a 600, bro? I need $6 right now.
Oh my goodness!
You know?
So the perception. So you're thinking that the money is equal.
Yeah, we do feel like, I don't know, for some reason in the Caribbean we tend to think that when you get to these places, you're living the life, you've arrived, and that's definitely not the case. But I would tell you, what I appreciate about Canada is that you have a fair opportunity to get where you want to be. If you're at the bottom of the ladder,
right,
and you're in Canada, as long as you're willing to put in the work and put in the time, people don't really care to some extent, like how you look, where you're from. Just put in the work, pay your taxes, do what you need to do, right? And I respect that and I appreciate that. Wow. Whereas in the Caribbean, we tend to say, if you're a foreigner, you're not getting out jobs, you're not getting,
right.
So
each country has to protect, I guess, their own. Because and the scale of living too. So I think it's not comparable because we're a weathered environment. We need a lot more. There's more expenses. Yeah. So even when you're talking about just utilities alone. So when you're talking about heating systems and cooling systems, that's at an expense, right? Agree. So utilities is a huge cost. When you're talking about schooling, obviously you're coming from abroad. Yeah. So I don't know if you're aware, but there's like two different rates. Like if you're homebound versus abroad.
100%.
Yeah, it's like almost like double the rate and things like that. So each country creates their barriers in order to make sure that they protect their own. But with that being said, like I said, I think it's not even just localized to the Caribbean, but I think it's all over the world. Yeah. Anytime you are dreaming, that American dream, that European dream, that Canadian dream, always seem more pronounced when you're not there versus the reality.
That's true. And I wanted to say one more thing where the flight training is concerned. Like, a lot of people do ask me a lot, like, why Canada, though?
Yes.
Why not the Canada? US? Why not the UK? All my life, I've never been very interested in going to the US. I know that's weird, but a lot of my friends or family, they're always, fascinated with the US.
Of course.
I've never been. It's not a political thing. It's just me. I didn't.
Yeah.
So my choices have always been the UK and Canada.
Okay.
So the conversion of the money to the UK would have been even more steep for me.
Of course.
So I wasn't able to go there. But I came here. Here's something you didn't mention in your stats.
What?
The pilot license that are given by in Canada are well respected and worldwide, even more so than places like the US. They're just on par with the UK. You can go anywhere in the world and present your Canadian criteria.
You're kidding.
And you're accepted. You're welcomed. Yeah.
So you can work for any airline around the world if you study here.
Because the truth is that the training in Canada is a lot more vigorous than other places. There's a book that we use for training. It's called From the Ground Up. And that's such a great name because they teach you everything about the aircraft. I have to know the pressure of the tire of the aircraft that I'm flying, Whereas in the US, they don't necessarily focus on all of the things that are focused on in Canada. So I accepted and respected that. And I feel honored to be able to get a license with the kind of weight or backing that a Canadian pilot license have, to be honest.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah. Why is it so detailed? I guess because we're dealing with aerospace. They kind of combine aviation
100%.
And aerospace. I know that Canada's very technological driven.
Canada's technologically driven and they're very careful too. So I think that they prefer to make sure that you have the knowledge rather than, you don't and something happens.
Right, right. Well, once again, you're listening to Black Wellness. I'm your host, Giselle Wilson. We'd like to thank you so much for listening in. We're talking to our pilot, Eugene Rodgers, who has a fascinating story. He told us his journey and his determination, his intense will to be a pilot from since the age of 5 when he went on his first plane. And he raised over 75,000 Canadian just to go to school and be in the industry. And it took him 10 years plus to do that. The mental fortitude and the determination, I think, is incredible.
Thank you.
Absolutely incredible. And this month we're talking about men and mental health.
Yeah.
And speaking on that level, what were the challenges? You talked a bit about depression. Not that you went to full-scale depression, but times where you were low.
Right.
Describe some of those times and what were the triggers for those things.
Okay, so first of all, when I just came, I experienced for the first time in my life depression, and that was because I've never lived in a basement before, and where I'm from, we could see the light all the time. And I came in the middle of winter, and I was staying in someone's basement. So to see the light, I used to have to walk from the back of the basement to the front. And after a couple of weeks, I started having silly, weird thoughts, man. And I told my flight instructor, and he was like, "Oh, you're just transitioning." So after he put me on to someone else, because I mean you can't fly under certain conditions, okay?
Right.
And then I actually spoke to someone here, like a professional, and they were explaining that, you know, based on the winter, the season, and how much you see the light and stuff like that, it can change. But what you can do is change your environment and so forth. So that's how I moved from a basement, and now I'm on the top floor of a building, and that fixed the problem because I've never experienced depression, where, so to speak. Another issue that I faced is during my training. The government of Canada raised the minimum wage for workers, and as a result of that, my school raised some of their prices. And of course, I did not necessarily factor in the fact that I would have to pay to live someplace here.
That's right.
So obviously, I was running out of funds, and I was running out of funds quick. So I didn't know what to do because at this point, I had invested literally everything that I had to come here. Back home, literally, if I go back home, I have to build again from where I start.
So there's no option to fail.
Right. So failure is not an option.
Not an option.
I literally ran out of funds where that is concerned, and I've been back and forth with my bank back home for months for them to give me some funds and stuff like that. And because of the fact that they think that I'm doing great here, they don't think I'm coming back home, even though I said to them I'm coming back home. You know, they're like, we can't. So what happened is, last year, I'm an Uber driver.
Right.
Okay, so that's
Uber.
my move. I'm an Uber driver. So
He's all about transportation.
Last year, in the middle of going through all of this, I picked up somebody in Scarborough, the person and their mom. I was taking them to a wedding in Mississauga.
Right.
And obviously, it's a long drive from Scarborough to Mississauga. And the person started talking to me, and she was all fascinated with the fact that I was black and I was studying to be a pilot. Her name ended up being Sharon Fletcher.
Oh,
right?
I know Sharon. We know Sharon. Yes,
so she pushes this page on Facebook called Blacks Inspire and stuff like that. And she did a video of me. And
we have it on our Black Wellness website on Facebook.
So I did that video. I didn't even tell people of the problems that I was facing, because at that point I just wanted to try to promote to people that no matter where you're from, no matter what your background is, how rich or poor you think you are, you can become something. You can change your stars or whatever the case is. Yeah. But her and I, we exchanged numbers, and she would message me all the time. And one day I explained to her, like, listen, man, this is what I'm facing. And she said, first of all, you should do a GoFundMe page. Second of all, you should send a link to me. I'll put it out there, and this will happen, and this will happen. So
she was your cheerleader.
To be honest, like, at that point, I was really down with my feelings, and I did it not thinking or knowing that anything would happen, because for the first time in my life, I felt like a minority here. So who gives attention to the minority, so to speak? Yeah, or that's what's going through my head, you know?
Right.
Anyway, she put it out there, and then one day, Laurie Biza sent me a few messages.
Our producer.
Yeah, and she was like, "Listen, man, I read your story, and this is a lovely story, and I'm gonna talk to somebody." And even when she said that, I'll be honest. Hopefully, she's not listening right now. But even when she said that, I said to myself, "This can't be real." You know, like, I'm doubting anything is gonna happen.
Right.
And nothing happened for like a month or so, and then I got a call from her. I don't even know how she got my number. And she said she spoke to somebody for the Urban Pilots Network. Yeah. He's the president, and he's gonna be calling me. All right, but if he doesn't call you today or tomorrow, don't worry. He just flies. He's a pilot, and he's busy.
Schedule's everywhere. Yeah.
So I said, okay, no problem, thanks. And like a month went by, I got no call. Okay. And then I eventually got a call from Tony Lawrence, and he called me from the Urban Pilot Network, and I was like, okay. And he said, listen, I heard your story. I read your story because obviously he saw my GoFundMe page. Yeah. And he said, you need to join the Urban Pilots Network. You know, we're a group of extraordinary men and women, and we try to help each other, mentor each other, and we think that we can help you, and we think that you can help us. So we got together, and eventually he introduced. Well, there was a mixer last year. There was a banquet that we went to, and that banquet introduced me to the Dream Never Die Foundation. And they told me that they had scholarships that I can apply to, and great things were happening.
Oh my gosh,
Great
it's
things started
amazing.
happening.
Well, there you go. Actually, Eugene Rodgers, you are a scholarship recipient.
I am.
Of the UPN, which is the Urban Pilots Network.
That is correct.
Definitely, we met up and saw each other at their last year-end event, so congratulations to you.
Thank you.
And for those who want to know more about the Urban Pilot Network, just look up urbanpilots.net, I believe is their website. You can find out exactly what they do. They do a lot of training, especially for those who are minority or who are in urban communities and who want to learn more about aviation. So they do professional development. They also have a youth camp called Youth Takes Flight that happens annually during the summer. I believe they operate out of the Rexdale area.
Yeah.
So if you're interested in that, look up the Youth Takes Flight website as well. I think registrations are going on right now, so you could get registered in time for this summer. If you're tuning in, you missed out on an action-packed half hour. We were talking to Eugene Rodgers, who's in the aviation industry here in Canada, here in Toronto, and he has an incredible story of resilience. And we're featuring him today with regards to our monthly theme, which is Black men and their mental health, their mental wellness. During our discussion, Eugene mentioned we last were speaking about his mental health during challenging times. You mentioned depression and mentioned something very interesting that happens culturally to our people, or people who are from warmer climates, and the impact of the sun on our health. I mean, it's quite interesting. I think when we study the impact of vitamin D deficiency, the impact of our melanin and things like that, we really don't correlate. I don't know even if there's enough studies done about the importance of vitamin D and the impact of our level of melanin and what it does for us culturally and for our bodies to stay well, mentally, physically. For those who don't know, melanin is produced in your pineal gland, which is located, some people refer to it as your third eye, right here in between your eyes, right in the middle of your brain. And actually, it relies on sunlight. It takes in the sunlight. It's kind of like a photoreceptor. It's part of your your endocrine system. For those who don't know, I'm not a doctor, but as you know my story of wellness, I learned a lot about the body. And it's a very important gland, and it feeds every cell in the body. It's a very complex gland that interfaces, like I said, with every organ, every cell of your body. And as people of color, as Black people of the African diaspora, we require more sunlight and more vitamin D than other peoples, other races of the world, other cultures. And being in Canada, sometimes there is extreme deficiency. And we have to recognize that. So for those coming from Africa, the Caribbean, from warmer climates, we have to recognize the impact of lesser sunlight, of seasons. You know, we talk about the winter blahs. You know, a lot of Canadians experience that, much less. New immigrants coming into the country, not knowing that type of information. So I'm really happy that you shared that story of the impact of living, like you said, in a basement apartment and not seeing the sunlight. So I want to talk conversely on the other side, being in the air. Are there any health impacts to being in the air in terms of the pressure and talking air pressure? We talked a lot about the mental pressure, but the air pressure and stuff like that, does that impact on the health?
Well, we do learn a lot about hypoxia and how it affects us and so forth. I would say that after a while, you figure out how to deal with that. You eat better and you sleep better and stuff like that.
What is hypoxia?
One of the things,
what is that?
It's just the lack of oxygen to our body, especially our brain, especially when you go higher in altitude.
On a consistent basis.
Yeah. So sometimes we fly on the border of too high and too low, which is about 10,000, 11,000 feet, so to speak. And our aircrafts, when we train, they're not pressurized. So anything higher, then you're gonna lose certain senses, so to speak, or you're gonna, pass out.
So how do you endure a flight? So like if you're flying to
you fly
Europe,
below you fly below that particular altitude, so to speak. If you have a pressurized aircraft, of course, that you can go up, there's no problem. You would face no issues. But I would say the biggest issue that we do face is that same sunlight that we've been talking about. We're closer to it when we're flying.
Right.
So in terms of our eyes, we tend to try to protect it a lot by using sunshades or prescribed glasses with, that changes color, so to speak, progressive lens. So we're exposed directly or even closer to the sun.
Right.
So that is a little bit of a worrisome. And then I would imagine that persons who do long haul flights, they have to deal with proper sleep and proper health, proper eating, so to speak, so that they can sleep and endure their flights.
Exactly.
Because the last thing you want to know is that you're on a long flight to the UK and the pilot is
not prepared.
So
yeah. What do you think? What is the lifestyle like? Because does that support a family? Meaning maybe financially it does,
right?
But in terms of your schedule,
right? Yeah. Okay, so before I talk about the lifestyle, I have to explain that to get into aviation or to be a pilot, it's not one of those things that you can do because you want a job. You have to first start with passion, because once you have that passion, then you're able to adapt. Because believe me, living out of a suitcase is not necessarily the easiest thing to do. But if you're doing it from passion, it doesn't bother you.
Okay.
And you get very accustomed to it. So
of course.
Yeah, and even for flight attendants, it's the same things too. I mean, they're living out of their suitcase as well, more or less. But yeah, you just have to make sure that you take care of yourself. When you do get yourself your time, you have self-care, a lot of self-care.
Right, self-care. We advocate for that on the show.
That's why a lot of people see pilots' Instagram page and so forth, and they're all over trying to enjoy themselves. It's because they're decompressing so that they can properly fly you across the ocean, so to speak.
Don't disturb the pilots or the flight attendants when they're drinking their, virgin margaritas and things like that.
Yeah, but to be honest, it can take toll on your health. But again, if you're doing this from a place of passion, then you will know to take care of your health to the best of your ability and so forth. So
Excellent. We also, before the break, we were talking about your experience with UPN.
Yes.
So I want to elaborate more on that.
You know what? Most of my life, I've been in positions where I've helped to mentor younger folks, help them to not make mistakes that I've made coming up.
Right.
I've never really been in a position where I've been mentored. And I will tell you, from the day that I met Tony, and I met him on the phone, okay, I never felt like a stranger to him. And he didn't care what color I was. He didn't care where I was from.
Right.
He just cared that I was doing something that I obviously love. And he thinks he would be able to help. And he is going to help. That's how it was. So from day one, I felt like this was an older brother.
Right.
And he's been a mentor to me because he has the knowledge.
Right.
He introduced me to other members of the executive for Urban Pilots Network, like Warren Holt. And these are seasoned pilots that are as humble as you can possibly think. And I appreciate their humility so much. And the gentlemen and women that they have in the network, we all respect each other, and one of the things we do is we don't approach each other as a stranger, whether or not we know each other. Right. We're brothers, we're sisters. We all have red blood. We're so that's helped a lot.
Amazing. Yeah, when we interviewed them, when we intersected with them, like you said, they're very humble. Mm-hmm. It's almost like they're off the radar. They want to be regular folk, I guess, when they're in the public. But they have a strong sense of community.
100%.
And really bringing in young people and preparing them to be in this industry.
That is correct. They started quite a few years ago.
I think it was 2003 or 4.
Yeah, and Tony in particular, one of the reasons that he wanted to do this so much is because he understands that the journey is hard. Not even just to becoming a pilot, but becoming a doctor, becoming whatever you want to become.
Yeah.
One of the things he said to me that resonated with me, and as a matter of fact, it's something that I felt when I was growing up. If you ask a young boy or young girl, what do you want to be when you grow up? They would say things like a doctor or a scientist or a pilot,
Yeah.
They would say things that are reputable and so forth. But as the years have gone by, if we ask our younger boys and girls, regardless what color they are, what is it that you want to be? I want to be a rapper, or I want to be a basketball player. And I'm not saying that these things are not good or not bad, because you make more money than I probably would. But at the end of the day, we need more people growing up with the mentality that I can be a doctor, I can be a scientist, I can make a difference, I can be the president, you know?
Definitely.
Because if you can foresee it, if you can perceive it, you can achieve it.
That is absolutely right.
So he
sometimes we limit ourselves with what we perceive this big dream
exactly, and even I can speak for myself as somebody who now feels like a minority. Like, I think that has been one of the guiding lights for me all this time, because I've always wanted to be something better. Like my mom used to say, it's not just your aptitude, but also your attitude that determines your altitude. Okay, and that's just big words to say. It's not just the way you look, but the way that you carry yourself, the way that you think, and the way that you perceive things.
Definitely.
That will determine how far in life you go.
That really resonates with me. As a child, I've always wanted to be. When I saw Oprah at I was 7 or 8 years old, I'm like, that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
I wanted to speak eloquently. I wanted to help people. I was very interested in people, and I knew I could use my communication skills to bring out their stories and to help resolve issues and things like that. And I remember at first when my parents were like, "You want to do what?" Because it's not like it's not the traditional teacher, doctor, lawyer. And like you, there's been challenges along the way, but I really find hope and continue to be inspired by your story in terms of persevering. I am years old, etching on half a century, and I'm still at it, you know, and there's pitfalls, there's changes. I went through a lot of technological changes because when I went to school in the 90s, television was the dinosaur in the sense that it was very large scale.
Yeah.
So you had like a team, you had to have a studio, all this kind of stuff. And then I guess with the progress of technology, bringing it in more into the home and more accessible, and then with social media, it kind of boomed, like you could do it on your own. And for someone like me that was trained in a specific way, it was an adjustment. And now, you know, knowing the impact of mobile technology and all different types of new devices that you can shoot yourself on, and even the style of it, reality television changed everything, right? So everyone is looking in each other's closets and in each other's homes, kind of thing. So it's just very interesting in terms of changing with the times. I think what do you think about expectations? I think when we talk about young people or anyone, sometimes we have expectations of that dream coming now. I want to play on that timeline that you're talking about again.
Yeah, you know what? It happens to a lot of us. We want everything now. Yeah. And if we can't get it now, we either get frustrated, or we quickly quit, or we think that it's not meant for us because it's a little bit hard. And you know, one of the things that I can testify is that I believe that when I'm completed my commercial license, I would appreciate my license a lot more than I would have appreciated it if it was handed to me, because I knew that I went sleepless nights for it, and I went homeless nights for it, and I knew that I battled for it, so I would appreciate it. And we said this earlier, if it's worth having, it's worth fighting for.
It is. How does your family feel about all you've accomplished?
You know, my mother. My mother is extremely proud. I mean, I'm the last of 7 children. Okay?
What?
I'm the last of 7 children.
Wow.
And I think she's amazed, because even when I didn't have any funds and so forth, and there were nights that I didn't know where my next meal was coming from whilst I've been here. Like, it's the hardest thing for a parent to be somewhere and cannot help their child that's going through certain things.
Wow.
So the day that I called them, the day that I got the scholarship, can I tell you about it really quickly?
Please, of course.
The day that I got the scholarship, I was on the phone with my bank back home, and my family was there. I even have a recording of it to prove that this has been happening.
Right.
They were on the phone. My bank was on the phone with me, saying to me, "We cannot give you any more funds. We cannot give you any funds whatsoever because this is the situation." And my phone was ringing. It was a local Canadian number, and I didn't have it saved in my phone, which meant I don't know who this is.
Wow.
So in my mind, I said, listen, this person, I'll call them back when I'm done. But it felt like a voice was in my room, and the voice said to me, answer the phone, right? I put the bank on hold, and I answered the phone. Hello, good day. And one of the gentlemen from UPN was calling me to let me know that I got the scholarship. And I was upset. I said to him, listen to me. If this is a prank call, no, it's a bad time. Because I know I have the bank on the other phone and they're telling me I don't have any more money. I know I have to go back home now.
Exactly.
And I said to him, if this is a prank call, hang up. You know, and I even said this at the scholarship. That's to show you how honest I'm being right now. And he said, no, it's not a prank call. Check your email. We just sent you a congratulatory email.
Yeah.
This is happening. And I said to him, man, you do not know what's happening right now. You know?
It's a miracle.
So whilst one door was being closed, another one was being open.
And it was part of that whole destiny. It was
100%.
part of your
and the fact
growth.
that it happened at the same day, at the same time, I'm never going to forget it. And that's the honest truth. I have a recording of this entire conversation because switching from one to the other, my phone was still recording the conversation. So it's something that I can actually show and say, listen, man, things are real. And even if you're going through a hard time financially, physically, emotionally, spiritually, whatever, don't give up. Because usually, if you go to the gym, the point that you actually start burning fat is when it gets harder. Like, it's when you're ready to quit. But if you force through that pain that you're feeling, bro, you will get more energy and you'll feel like a machine. And it's the same thing in life. Like the point where you're being tested the most, where you're being tried the most.
Right.
I think that's exactly where your breakthrough is.
And there's purpose for the pain.
Yeah,
you have to recognize there's purpose for the pain. The pain is what challenges us. The pain is what grows us on a spiritual, emotional, and a mental level.
100%.
How do you think you have grown from the time you've been on this journey up until
Listen,
now?
there were times I would not lie to tell you. I cut off everybody. I didn't want to talk to nobody. I didn't want to hear about God. I didn't want nothing because I'm up here in a strange land and I'm suffering. All right, but the fact that things still pull together for me, it helped me to realize that everything doesn't need to be done in my time. My time is not the time that's important. You know, it's what's meant for you. It will be for you. And that's the truth.
So true.
So like the mentality that I had before, today if I'm failing, I'm happy about it because you know what, something's gonna happen. You know, so and I think if we all try to adopt thoughts like that, positive thoughts towards what we're trying to do, no matter how hard you have to fight, no matter how it seems like tomorrow is not possible, then I'm telling you, it's gonna happen.
That is such an amazing way to think.
Yeah.
I want to touch a little bit on the academic or the education requirements to get into aviation college or aviation university. What do you need?
Okay, so in terms of aviation college and so forth, of course you're gonna have a prerequisite of having the subjects in school that relates and stuff like that, and good grades and so forth. You can also get into flight schools, so to speak, too. So flight schools take students to learn from the age of about 13, 14.
What?
At the award ceremony that we had for the scholarship, I met a 22-year-old. She's flying for Air Canada. She flies one of the big jets. 22-year-old. She got her license when she was about 16, 17. And,
but don't you need a degree to go along with that? Or
as I'm saying, if you go through a flight school, you don't necessarily have to get a degree. They will teach you everything you need to know.
Right.
It's just that for your personal education or gratification, you
get the support of that.
That's
the
correct.
greater support. Right.
So she's 22 and she's flying, man, and it was amazing to meet somebody she's younger than I am. And she was doing great things. So if you're interested in becoming a pilot, I would recommend that you contact a flight school or even contact the Urban Pilot Network, and they will help take you through the right channels that you want to go.
Will help you to develop your career.
Yeah,
that's amazing. And there's no grade, like point average or anything like that.
The work to become a pilot in terms of the book work. It could be hard. It could be stressful. I've had sleepless nights just studying navigation. And another subject that killed me was meteorology.
You study
Canadian meteorology is on another level. Like Canadian weather is so bipolar, right? and you have to understand it. But it's still a great opportunity and a great experience. Learning all these things.
Right. That's amazing. What do you think about the opportunities for women in the industry? Like I said, I was reading some stats.
Man, okay, so one of the best feelings for me is seeing female student pilots because there's not many females in the industry, to be honest. And I think now more than ever, women are realizing that we can do things too. So we have like a lot of flight attendants at my school that are now trying to learn to be pilots and stuff like that. There is a feel and there is a space open for women, and women tend to do better than men too. We're you know,
you're very charming.
I'm trying. But honestly, like women sometimes have more focus than we tend to have. But we need more women in the industry. Just like I felt like we needed more color in the industry.
Right.
I feel like we need more feminine people,
energy,
you know,
to
in
balance
the industry.
that out.
Yeah,
for sure.
And there's space for you. That's 100%. And a lot of people, they don't know that aviation is something that they can get into. You think that you have to be a rocket scientist. You don't necessarily have to be a rocket scientist. You have to be willing to learn and willing to focus on what you're getting, because it's not handed to you. A pilot license is not handed to you, especially in Canada.
Wow. Well, that's really good. That's really encouraging.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of what else to ask. Your story is so incredible. For those who are tuning in, once again, it's Black Wellness on Radio Region at radioregion.com. If you want to reach out to us by email, please do so at blackwellnessworldwide@gmail.com. Again, that's blackwellnessworldwide at gmail.com. We'll be coming out with our website quite soon. Also, catch us at the Durham Caribbean Festival, which is going to take place June 29 in Durham Region in Ajax at the Pickering High School. I believe it starts at 10 a.m. There's a free breakfast for all those who come. It's been 8 years running, and our network of vendors and practitioners and athletes will be there to service you directly. You could talk to them, meet them in person alongside many other vendors, performances, retailers, restaurants. Durham Caribbean Festival is like a staple within that community, and all the GTA should support. So we look forward to seeing you there and continue to do so. Also, I wanted to mention the Empress Walk. We're going to be doing this again this year. The Empress Walk is an initiative that I founded in 2017 that deals with women's health. So the health of women of color and culture, because sometimes there are barriers to the system, and sometimes we're not getting the information that we need. And I told you a little bit about my journey having Graves' disease and myasthenia gravis, autoimmune issues, and just my journey of being in a coma, recovering from that. And my give back to the world and to the community is to do the Empress Walk. So I feel as women, we need to walk together in order to be stronger. I believe in environmental exercise. It doesn't have to be super complex. You could just walk and walk at your leisure and walk together. So we'll be doing the Empress Walk alongside Rastafest. So we're going to be walking into the Rastafest Festival this year, which will be at the Pioneer Village. Right near York University. We're going to be walking down Jane Street on August the 18th. So please look out for more information. You could go to empresswalk.org, or you could check out our Facebook at the Empress Walk. Continue to stay tuned with us. Next week, we're going to continue talking about men and their mental wellness. We're going to be talking next week about cannabis, ganja, marijuana, whatever you want to call it. We're going to talk about the culture, the history, the criminalization, the legalization. We're going to talk about all of that and how it affects our Black men. So with that being said, we want to thank you so much for sharing your story.
And I'm just going to quickly
do what you got to do
as well. Okay?
Yes,
so
please.
The walk for me is not finished. All right. So if you do want to find out how to contact me so you can assist the GoFundMe page,
please.
I'm gonna leave my number with you, because I would give it right now, but I don't remember it off my head. Don't blame me.
That's okay, but tell them to go. So it's GoFundMe, and what do they type in, or what's the title?
Tuition assistance, so to speak.
Tuition assistance.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you should see my picture.
We'll post the link on Facebook.
We'll
definitely post the link. Please support this brother, and it's not someone that's just asking for random help.
Right.
He practices what he preaches. He has invested, I'm telling you, probably now over 100,000 Canadian towards his education to become a pilot. He's truly determined. This is his dream in the making. He will dream. It's going to happen. It is happening.
Yeah, and not just for me. Listen, if you're out there and you're listening to this podcast, you're watching this on Facebook, you need to understand, again, whatever you're going through, it's not bigger than you. It's not bigger than your God. It's not bigger than where you can be. Okay, so keep pushing.
Yes.
Keep pressing. If you run out of energy, call me. I'm going to give you a little picker-upper, and we'll get there together if we have to.
Well, Eugene, you're awesome. I can't wait to go on a flight with you in it. I know I'm going to be protected. It's going to be a fun flight. So keep us posted with your progress, and we'll keep you posted with his progress. We want to thank you so much for listening to Black Wellness. You can find us on Facebook at Support Black Wellness now. So check us out on Facebook. We're going to be posting the video next week. Our live podcast is on radioregion.com. And I'm your host, Giselle Wilson. Thank you so much for listening. Take care. You were great.